What this means then is that there will be an underlying basis that you don't have a right to choice on the abortion front, but you'll have to comply with whatever the state laws are about it. That could see people heading, say, to California to get themselves an abortion because they can't get one in their own state.
This morning on The Flow, we go to what is a very contentious topic in America right now, but it may be one that raises a lot of discussion right around the world. The issue that the Supreme Court in America has had an initial draft that would, as it's been leaked, seem to indicate that the Roe versus Wade judgment of the 1960s on abortion is about to be overturned. Rikki, I'm going to ask you about this because you've got some legal background and it seems to me that this is going to be a very interesting time for the Americans, particularly as they, I guess, unpack this and what it could mean. The judgment, of course, is a draft only at the moment. But where does this go?
Well, it's a socio-political earthquake in America, this leaking of a judgment, and not because as a former lawyer, it is scandalous that a judgment emerges before it's actually been delivered by the judges. That virtually never happens. So there'll need to be an inquiry into how that happened. But the reactions from the likes of the Obamas, Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, and of course Joe Biden himself, with midterm elections imminent in America, this is going to be a huge debate. And I wouldn't be surprised not only if there are protest marches in the US about this and quick moves in Congress, but also I think it'll find its way into the Australian federal election debate.
All right. Over in America, there are a number of states that if this does get through and the draft becomes law and the Supreme Court decision to overturn that 1960s decision, if that is the case, then does that mean that a whole range of states across the US would be able to put their laws in place which would actually match the Supreme Court decision, and in effect that there would be women in those states that wouldn't be able to obtain an abortion in that particular state?
Well, it's a constitutional change in effect because the federal ruling of Roe v. Wade meant that states in their own context couldn't just regulate abortion as they wish. They had to uphold the basic principle of largely pro-choice and that you could seek abortion on demand. But that's been continually challenged by states and legal cases have been run and some of these have been overturned. But what it now means, if this case becomes law and the court has confirmed it's not just some sort of willy-nilly draft, it is actually where the judges are going with this, and that's why the politicians are going nuts about it. What this means then is that there will be an underlying basis that you don't have a right to choice on the abortion front, but you'll have to comply with whatever the state laws are about it. That could see people heading, say, to California to get themselves an abortion because they can't get one in their own state.
Does it have any implications elsewhere? We know that South Australia's laws were brought in by Robin Milhouse, who was at that stage the Chief Justice, and in 1969 they allowed abortion as law that came into South Australia. It was after the Roe versus Wade case. So is it likely that we see any challenges to our own laws, particularly those in the states which were passed only in the last few years to move abortion to a full term, which has outraged a lot of people in the community?
It's a perfect example, Wayne, because South Australia was one of the first to jump after Roe v. Wade was passed in that direction, albeit in a more tame direction than the new laws that have been passed in South Australia in recent years. The real question here, and why I think this will pop up in the federal election campaign, is because we've had this question of what is a woman dominating the first couple of weeks of the campaign. The Catherine Devers situation, comments that Alex Antic, the South Australian senator, has drawn out of bureaucrats on what a woman is or isn't. I think now elements of the media, not ourselves, will go and draw out not just the individual candidates running in seats, their views on abortion, but One Nation is a party that is unashamedly saying they are pro-life this election. They could have the balance of power in the Senate if they win several senators, and that could be a dominant issue when it comes to repealing some of the state laws.
Yes, at a federal level, it may be that we see a number of senators that would say state laws are wrong in this area, whether or in a constitutional framework there's a opportunity to change anything in the states. I don't know that that's the case, but that's where I guess the lawyers are going to have a feast on it. But you do raise a good point because in the community, at least in the US, but it seems like it carries through generally, it may be that more than 50% of people actually don't agree with the abortion laws that we currently have. It seems like the people don't necessarily agree with what those in Parliament have legislated.
Well, it's so contested in America that it is regularly polled, and the polls have been turning towards 50% saying they are pro-life on this particular issue of abortion. But the pollsters in Australia don't seem terribly interested in this topic, and it's rarely ever surveyed, but maybe it will be off the back of this. This is a socio-political earthquake coming out of America that I think will find its way into Australian politics.
It's a very interesting question and one that we've asked here on the Flow Morning Show, Rikki. Really a good a deal of research has to go into these quite contentious topics, and I thank you for your time this morning.